The morning rush at Brightmart Superstore was in full swing. Shoppers streamed through the glass doors, pushing carts with squeaky wheels, kids tugging on parents' sleeves, and cash registers beeping with steady rhythm. The store, one of the biggest in town, was known for its wide aisles and bright yellow uniforms. Behind the glossy shelves, however, the employees knew a different story, one of tension, hierarchy, and a manager who enjoyed his position far too much. Ethan, the newly promoted store manager, strutted through the aisles with a clipboard in hand. He was young, mid-30s, with slick back hair, polished shoes, and a permanent smirk that made the staff uneasy. To him, the store wasn't just a job, it was his stage, and the employees were his props. "Faster, people, faster," he barked, as he passed the bakery counter where a nervous teenager tried to stack fresh bread without dropping a loaf. "You call that display neat? My 5-year-old niece could do better." The teen muttered an apology, face red with embarrassment. Ethan barely noticed, he was already moving toward the stockroom, his eyes scanning for the next victim of his criticism. That was when his gaze fell on Mr. Samuel Hayes. Sam, as most of the employees affectionately called him, was the oldest worker in the store. 72 years old, with silver hair, kind brown eyes, and a slight limp from years of factory work, he had taken the job at Brightmart after retirement just to make ends meet. He wore the same faded yellow uniform as everyone else, but somehow, on him, it carried a quiet dignity. Sam was sweeping near the entrance, humming softly to himself, his movements slow but steady. Most customers liked him, he always had a warm smile or a gentle, "good morning," for anyone who passed. But to Ethan, he was an easy target. "Samuel!" Ethan's sharp voice cut through the air. "How many times do I have to tell you? Sweep faster. This isn't a retirement home, it's a business." Several employees nearby froze, exchanging uneasy glances. They had seen this dynamic before. Ethan loved reminding Sam of his age, of how outdated he was. Sam paused, leaning slightly on the broom. He didn't argue, didn't snap back. Instead, he gave a small nod. "Yes, sir. I'll try harder." "Try harder?" Ethan scoffed. "At your age, trying isn't enough. Either you get the job done or you don't." He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only Sam could hear. "Frankly, I don't know why we still keep you around. A younger worker could do double the work in half the time." Sam's smile faltered for a moment, but he quickly covered it with his usual calm expression. "I'm grateful for the job, Mr. Ethan. I'll do my best." Ethan straightened, satisfied with his small display of power. To him, managing wasn't about leading, it was about dominance. And Sam, the quiet old man, was the perfect outlet. By noon, Ethan had barked orders at nearly every department. He made the cashier cry over a miscounted bill, scolded the stock boy for misplacing a cereal box, and berated the deli worker for slicing ham too thick. Each time, he walked away feeling victorious, as though every criticism proved his authority. But he wasn't done yet. At exactly 2 p.m., Ethan gathered the staff in the break room for a quick meeting. He tapped his clipboard, demanding attention. "Listen up, everyone. The regional director is coming tomorrow for a surprise inspection." He paused dramatically, scanning the nervous faces. "That means this place needs to shine. Floors spotless, shelves aligned, bathrooms sparkling. No mistakes." Murmurs filled the room. Inspections were always stressful. Everyone knew Ethan would push them to their limits. His eyes landed on Sam again, and a cruel idea formed in his mind. "Samuel," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "I have a special task for you." Sam looked up, his wrinkled hands folded patiently on the table. "Yes, sir? You're going to clean the bathrooms. Top to bottom. Floors, mirrors, toilets, everything." Ethan smirked. "I want them so clean I can eat off the floor." The room went silent. Assigning bathrooms was considered the hardest, dirtiest job in the store. Usually, it was shared among staff or done in pairs. But Ethan was giving it all to one person, an elderly man with a limp. "Sir," a young cashier began hesitantly, "maybe we can help Mr. Sam. It's a lot for one person." Ethan shot her a glare. "Did I ask for volunteers? No. Samuel is more than capable. Aren't you, Samuel?" All eyes turned to the old man. His face showed no anger, no protest. Only quiet acceptance. "Yes, Mr. Ethan. I'll take care of it." Ethan's smirk widened. "Good. Glad to see at least one of you takes responsibility seriously." The meeting ended. Employees shuffled out, whispering among themselves. Some shook their heads in pity, others clenched their fists in frustration. But no one dared confront Ethan. His word was law. Sam stood slowly, gripping his broom like a cane. He caught the sympathetic glance of Maria, the deli worker, and gave her a small reassuring smile. "It's all right," he said softly. "Work is work. We all do what we must." Maria blinked back tears. "But it's not fair." Sam shrugged gently. "Fairness is rare in this world. But kindness we can choose." With that, he turned and began making his way toward the bathrooms, his steps slow but steady, his back straight with quiet pride. From the office window above, Ethan watched him go, chuckling under his breath. Let's see how the old man handles this. What Ethan didn't know was that the simple task he assigned, born out of arrogance and cruelty, was about to lead him to a discovery that would shake him to his core and change the way he looked at life forever. The morning after the bathroom incident, the office buzzed with quiet murmurs. Some employees had seen the old janitor leaving the restroom late at night, shoulders slumped but eyes glistening with some unspoken burden. Others whispered about how the manager, Mr. Collins, had stormed out looking pale and shaken. Nobody knew exactly what had happened inside that tiled room, but curiosity spread like wildfire. For Mr. Collins, however, the discovery was haunting. He had expected to find dirt, laziness, or even incompetence to further humiliate the old worker. Instead, he had found something that gnawed at his conscience, a tattered photograph of a young boy taped to the inside of a cleaning closet door, with faded letters scrawled beneath, "I'll make you proud, son." It wasn't just a photo. Around it were carefully folded letters, dozens of them, some yellowed with age, others newer. They were addressed to a boy named Daniel. The letters spoke of sacrifices, long hours, and dreams that one day the old janitor's hard work would pay off. The most recent letter, half-written, had been left on the cleaning cart. Mr. Collins couldn't shake the image. The thought of the old man pouring his heart into unseen words, hidden in the most degrading corner of the building, unsettled him. Still, pride kept him silent. That afternoon, while sipping coffee in the staff lounge, Collins overheard two employees talking. "Did you know Harold used to be an engineer?" one whispered. "Yeah," the other replied, lowering her voice. "I heard he gave it all up to take care of his sick wife. And when she passed, he never went back. Just took whatever work he could find." Collins froze. The words stabbed at him. Could it be true? Had he reduced a once skilled man to scrubbing toilets, all without knowing his story? But instead of compassion, Collins felt anger. Anger at himself for being moved. Anger at Harold for hiding his truth. And most of all, anger that this knowledge made it harder for him to treat Harold with the same disdain. That evening, he decided to test Harold. "Harold," Collins barked as the man wheeled his cart down the hall. "Tomorrow, I want those bathrooms spotless. Not just clean, spotless. If I find even one smudge, you'll be looking for another job. Understand?" Harold looked up, weary but calm. His eyes, a soft shade of blue, carried no defiance, only quiet endurance. "Yes, sir. I understand." But later that night, as Harold scrubbed the floor tiles, his hands trembled. He thought of his son, Daniel, now grown and working in another city. Harold had never told him the truth, that he worked as a janitor, not in an office like he pretended. Daniel believed his father was still respected, still admired. Harold wanted it that way. He wanted his son to be proud, even if it meant swallowing humiliation day after day. Yet Colin's cruel words echoed in his head. Looking for another job? At Harold's age, who would hire him? The next morning, Collins strutted into the bathroom, expecting failure. Instead, he found something else entirely. The place was spotless, gleaming like it had never gleamed before. But tucked on the sink was something that made his chest tighten, a small envelope with his name on it. He hesitated before opening it. Inside was a short note written in neat, old-fashioned handwriting. "Sir, I know you don't respect me. That's all right. I am not here for respect. I am here because sometimes, life forces us into places we never imagined. All I ask is that you allow me to work with dignity, for the sake of the promises I've made to someone I love." Collins crumpled the paper in his fist, a war raging inside him. This wasn't the defiant response he had expected. It was human. Too human. And for the first time in years, Collins wondered if he was the one who should be ashamed. Mr. Collins sat in his office that afternoon, the envelope still in his pocket. He told himself it didn't matter, Harold was just a janitor. But no matter how many reports he tried to read, or how many emails he answered, his mind kept returning to that note. The handwriting was steady, dignified, almost scholarly. It wasn't the kind of scribble he'd expect from someone who mopped floors for a living. And the words, they had weight. They carried pain, sacrifice, and a kind of quiet nobility. Collins hated the way it made him feel. By late evening, curiosity got the better of him. He logged onto his computer, pulled up employee records, and typed in Harold Turner. What he found made his breath catch. Years ago, Harold had been a decorated mechanical engineer, employed at one of the top firms in the city. He had several patents under his name. His work had been cited in trade journals. In fact, some of the very equipment Collins' company used was based on Harold's designs. But then, 10 years earlier, there was a sudden break in Harold's career. His wife's medical bills had piled up, draining his finances. And after her passing, Harold never returned to his former profession. Instead, he drifted into low-paying jobs, security, delivery, janitorial work. Collins leaned back in his chair, stunned. He realized with a jolt that he had been mocking and belittling a man who had once been the backbone of the very industry Collins now claimed expertise in. The next morning, Collins entered the building with a different air. He passed Harold in the hallway, who nodded politely before wheeling his cart away. Collins wanted to say something, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, Collins followed him at a distance. He watched as Harold bent down to pick up a dropped piece of paper for a secretary, smiled warmly at her, and wished her a good day. He saw the way Harold greeted the security guard by name, how he patted the shoulder of the delivery boy, how he carried himself with a dignity that belied the worn uniform he wore. It irritated Collins. How could a man with so little command so much quiet respect? That evening, unable to resist, Collins confronted him. "Harold," he said sharply, cornering him in the corridor. "Why are you here? Why do you settle for this?" Harold looked at him for a long moment, his tired eyes calm but steady. Then he answered in a soft voice. "Because life is not about where you work, Mr. Collins. It's about who you are while you're working. I made promises to my wife. I made promises to my son. Keeping those promises means more to me than a title or a paycheck." Collins scoffed, though the words struck deep. "You had everything, patents, respect, a career. And now, this." He gestured at the mop and bucket. Harold's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. "This job may look small to you. But every tile I scrub, every sink I shine, I do it with pride. Because at the end of the day, my son still thinks of me as his hero. And that's all that matters." Collins froze. The simplicity of it unnerved him. But what neither of them realized was that someone else had been listening. A young intern named Melissa had stopped at the corner to tie her shoe. She heard every word, and her heart swelled with admiration for Harold. The next morning, whispers spread again, but this time, not about Collins' cruelty. They were about Harold's quiet strength, his past achievements, and his unwavering devotion to his family. Employees who once overlooked the janitor now greeted him with warmth. Some even began helping him carry supplies. Collins, meanwhile, felt his authority slipping. How could the man he'd treated like dirt suddenly become the silent hero of the office? And then came the twist that Collins never saw coming. That Friday, while inspecting the bathrooms, Collins noticed something strange. A section of the wall paneling was loose. Curious, he pulled it back. Inside, hidden in a small crevice, was a metal box. He hesitated, heart pounding, before opening it. Inside were old journals, filled with sketches, calculations, and designs. Brilliant designs, blueprints for machines that could change industries. On the first page was a dedication written in Harold's careful hand, "For my son, Daniel. One day, these will be yours." Collins stared at the sketches in awe. This wasn't just the work of an old janitor. This was the legacy of a genius, hidden away in the shadows of a bathroom closet. And suddenly, Collins knew his world was about to change. Collins sat in his office late into the night, the box of Harold's journals resting on his desk like a silent accusation. Each page he turned revealed brilliance, innovations in energy efficiency, designs for safer equipment, concepts that could save companies millions. It was hard for Collins to reconcile the image, the man scrubbing toilets at dawn, and the visionary whose ideas could shape the future of engineering. By morning, he'd made a decision. He wasn't going to tell anyone. If Harold hadn't shared his work, then maybe it wasn't meant to be shared. But Collins? He saw opportunity. If he could claim these ideas as his own, his reputation would skyrocket. He slid the box into his briefcase, convincing himself it was just borrowing. But fate had other plans. The young intern, Melissa, had seen him in the bathroom the night before. She didn't know what he had found, but she saw the box under his arm, the guilty glance around, and the way he hurried into his office. Melissa had always admired Harold's humility. Something in her gut told her Collins was trying to take advantage. Later that day, she approached Harold. "Mr. Turner," she said softly, I think Collins found something of yours. Something important." Harold's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" Melissa hesitated, then explained what she'd seen. Harold's face paled. His journals. The years of sketches and notes he had hidden away during his wife's long illness, when he couldn't afford to pursue patents anymore. He had tucked them behind the bathroom wall one night, afraid of losing them, afraid his grief might lead him to throw them out. And then he had forgotten, or rather, forced himself to forget. But now, they were in Colin's hands. That afternoon, Collins called a sudden meeting. Employees gathered in the conference room, curious. Collins stood at the head of the table, looking unusually energized. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "our company is on the verge of a breakthrough. I've been working on some designs, revolutionary ones. If implemented, they could change the way our systems function forever." Gasps and murmurs filled the room. Melissa, sitting near the back, clenched her fists. She watched as Collins unveiled some of Harold's sketches, projecting them on the screen. "These," Collins declared, "are my creations. And with them, we're stepping into the future." Polite applause followed, but it wasn't enthusiastic. Something about Collins' delivery didn't sit right. He was boastful, smug, as though trying too hard to sell his genius. At the back of the room, Harold stood silently, mop still in hand. He hadn't planned to attend, but Melissa had urged him to. Now, he listened as a man half his age paraded his life's work as though it had sprung from his own mind. A tight pain twisted Harold's chest, not just anger, but sorrow. Those designs had been born from nights spent beside his wife's hospital bed, from whispered promises to his son, from dreams that had kept him alive through despair. And now, they were being stolen. After the meeting, whispers spread again, louder this time. "Did you see those designs?" one engineer asked. "Brilliant stuff, but I don't buy that Collins came up with them." "Exactly," another agreed. "Collins can barely manage the reports he has." Melissa decided she couldn't stay silent any longer. She caught Harold in the hallway. "You have to speak up," she urged. "People need to know the truth." Harold shook his head slowly. "The truth doesn't always win, Melissa. Sometimes, power shouts louder." But Melissa wasn't convinced. That evening, she stayed late in the office. Quietly, she slipped into Collins' office and took photos of the journals. Then she emailed them to herself. If Collins was going to claim Harold's work, Melissa was going to make sure the world knew the real story. 2 days later, the truth began to unravel on its own. A visiting client, an older man with a sharp eye, attended one of Collins' presentations. When the sketches flashed across the screen, the client frowned. Afterward, he approached Collins. "These designs," he said. "Where did you get them?" Collins smirked. "I created them myself." The client's eyes narrowed. "Interesting. Because I recognize the style. These look remarkably similar to the work of an engineer I knew years ago. A Harold Turner. He was brilliant, but after his wife passed, he disappeared." Collins froze. The client glanced toward the door, and spotted Harold, wheeling his janitor's cart down the hall. His eyes widened. "Good Lord. Harold Turner. It's you." The room went still. Employees turned, their gazes shifting between the janitor and their so-called genius manager. "Harold," the client said warmly, "these designs, they're yours, aren't they?" Harold looked down at his worn shoes, silent for a long moment. Then, in a voice steady with quiet pride, he said, "Yes. They're mine." Gasps rippled through the room. Collins tried to protest, but the damage was done. His credibility cracked like glass. And for Harold, the janitor everyone overlooked, the world was about to see him in a new light. The conference room buzzed with whispers. Employees exchanged shocked glances, some covering their mouths in disbelief. Collins stood rigid at the front, his smug expression gone, replaced by panic. "It's not true." Collins barked, his voice cracking. "He's just a janitor. He's lying. These sketches, they're mine." But his words sounded hollow, desperate. The client shook his head slowly. "I knew Harold Turner. I saw his work decades ago. His style, his precision, unmistakable. You, young man, are a fraud." Collins' face flushed crimson. "No. He's just some old man who cleans floors." That was the breaking point. Melissa rose from her seat, her phone in her hand. "Actually, I have proof," she said, her voice steady but firm. She projected the photos of Harold's journals onto the big screen, page after page, each dated and signed in Harold's careful handwriting. Gasps filled the room once more. Collins stumbled backward, sweat dripping down his temples. This is a setup," he shouted, but no one was buying it anymore. The CEO, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His deep voice cut through the noise. "Collins, enough. You've not only humiliated this company but attempted to steal another man's life's work. Pack your things. You're finished here." The silence that followed was deafening. Collins' career, built on arrogance and deception, had crumbled in seconds. He stormed out, muttering under his breath, but no one looked at him with sympathy. All eyes turned to Harold. The old janitor shifted uncomfortably, holding his mop handle like a shield. He didn't want the attention, the praise, or the spotlight. Yet in that moment, he couldn't hide anymore. Mr. Turner, the CEO said, standing and walking toward him. On behalf of this company, I owe you an apology. For years, you've worked in silence, unseen, unrecognized. And yet, your brilliance has never left you. If you're willing, I'd like you to take your rightful place again, not as a janitor, but as a lead engineer. The room erupted into applause. Employees stood to their feet, clapping and cheering, some with tears in their eyes. Harold's hands trembled. For so long, he had buried his past, his talent, his pride. He had convinced himself that his days of making a difference were gone. But now, life was offering him a second chance. I don't know what to say, Harold admitted, his voice thick with emotion. All I ever wanted was to keep my promises. To work hard. To raise my son. To live with dignity. He paused, looking around the room, then at Melissa, who gave him a proud, encouraging nod. But if sharing my knowledge can help others, then yes. I'll do it. The applause grew louder. That evening, Harold returned home to his modest apartment. His son, Daniel, was waiting at the table, studying. Dad, Daniel said, looking up, I heard something at school today. Some kids were saying you're a hero? That you're going to be an engineer again? Harold smiled softly, pulling out a chair. He sat down and placed the journals on the table in front of his son. These are for you, Daniel. They always have been. They're not just sketches. They're a reminder that no matter how far life pushes you down, you can always rise again. Daniel's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages, awe spreading across his face. Dad, this is incredible. Harold reached out, placing a weathered hand on his son's shoulder. It's not about being incredible, son. It's about being honest. About working hard, even when no one is watching. About never forgetting who you are. Daniel's eyes glistened with pride. You're my hero, Dad. Always. Meanwhile, Colin sat alone in a bar across town, nursing a glass of whiskey. His phone buzzed with rejection emails, former colleagues cutting ties, his reputation ruined. For the first time in years, he felt the sting of consequences. And deep down, he realized, he hadn't been defeated by Harold Turner. He had destroyed himself. Back at the company, things began to change. Employees treated Harold with newfound respect, not because of his past titles or inventions, but because of the way he had carried himself with humility all along. Melissa was promoted from intern to assistant project manager, thanks to her courage. And Harold? He spent his days guiding younger engineers, passing on his wisdom, his designs, and his values. Yet even in his new office, Harold never forgot the lessons of the janitor's closet. He kept his mop leaning against the corner, not as a reminder of shame, but as a symbol of dignity. Because true greatness, he knew, wasn't about the titles people gave you. It was about the integrity you carried in silence. And for Harold Turner, the janitor who had been overlooked, underestimated, and mocked, the truth had finally come to light. He was more than a janitor. He was a teacher, a builder, a father, and above all, a man of honor.